this discussion, but during dinner you had mentioned about a lack of support, public support for the war, and how Pearl Harbor came about, and the fact that we weren't totally ignorant about that. But I think Doc mentioned during dinner too that we had come, our nation had come very, very close to not. You want to explain that?
Well, the guys that raised the flag on Iwo Jima, Ira Hayes being the Arizona representative, yeah, they were sent on a national tour to raise war bonds, and it said that because of their efforts to raise so much money that they did, that actually kept us going for a little longer, but we were actually within 2 weeks before we broke.
I mentioned this during the dinner. The B-24 was what it had was a high-speed wing, very narrow. It was too small for an average person to get in there to shoot rivets. Henry Ford went to Miami to Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, hired every midget working there, put them inside those wings.
I didn't know
Wow.
that. Did you know that?
Yeah.
He had an assembly line in Detroit, 1 mile long. They turned out a B-24, 1 per hour.
Oh, wow.
England, we had the earliest model of the B-24. It had a fixed gun in the nose. Also, just behind the trailing edge of the wing, on the inside of the cabin, had a fuel transfer system where you had to actually take off a hose to replace it on the other. We lost airplanes because of that, fuel films in the aircraft. We also lost aircraft because the Germans quickly learned we could not use those free guns. Our planes then were replaced with the ball turret, and it had a fuel panel in the cockpit or here in the radio compartment for the flight engineer to control. You didn't have to go back and transfer your fuel back to friends in the service. When we came back, I said earlier, to get the new PBYs just prior to the 2 weeks prior to the war, one of my dear friends, his aircraft, he was another flight engineer, his aircraft developed engine trouble when we taxied it out. They were unable to make the trip. They kept the plane there. He then went to Aleutian Islands, and they managed to fly into a mountain up there. I had another good friend when I went to Pensacola in the PB-4Y2 squadron. We had 2 planes out on training mission, flying side by side. Plans were, when they reached a certain spot, planes deployed this way. Instead, they turned this way. I had the misfortune of escorting his wife to his funeral.
What was the endurance on the PBY?
PBY, just about 19 hours.
Okay.
When we ferried the planes out, we had 4 100-gallon fuel tanks in the aircraft itself, in the catwalk. But
Wobble pumps?
yeah, yes, that's exactly right. Pump it up. In fact, when the captain went out and made his 19-hour search, the 4 extra fuel tanks were still in his aircraft.
Wow.
I don't know whether he used any or not, but they were in there.
I was a Vietnam veteran. I flew in helicopters, and I understand some of the experiences that you had. Jack, my heart goes out to you. You're a hero of my heart. People have to need to know your story. We have to keep the story going, and we need to let people know how honorable and what a hero you are, and what all the people that you served with. The story and all the heroes that they did, the stories of what they accomplished for our country, and there's no one left to tell the story unless we continue to carry it on. So Jack, my heart's out to you. Good luck.
I appreciate that very much, and I'd like to tell you one short story there. Last October, I was invited by the Arizona World War II veterans group, I guess, whatever it is, something. Anyway, I was invited on a free trip to Washington to the World War II Memorial. And I hadn't thought too much about it prior to that. Went on Southwest and we made a stop in Detroit. And you would not believe the throng of people lined up on the tarmac greeting our aircraft as we taxied in. I couldn't believe it. When we landed in New Jersey then, the people in the terminal, the same thing. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that people were still interested in hearing about World War II or Pearl Harbor. I didn't know how many people even remembered it. But I also had the pleasure of addressing a 6th grade class by Altos Academy in Gilbert. The first thing I asked them, I said, do you young people know anything about Pearl Harbor? Have you ever heard of it? 3/4 of them raised their hand. Later on, I received a thank you note from 56 individuals in those classes. I personally answered every one of them, sealed them, carried them back to the school to give them to the kids. When I walked in the room, man, they stood up and hollered, "Hey!" I said, "Do you remember me?" They said, "We sure do."
Good for you, Jack.
And had a good time there, and we had a great conversation.
Well, thank you.
And as a token of our gratitude, I'd like to present this to you.
That's beautiful.
And it's even got a little stand, or you can put it on the wall.
Oh, there you go. That's great. Thank you very much.